Hello. I hope you're all having a wonderful and lovely day. For those who are new, my name is Lawrence Harris. I'm a youth empowerment speaker. I help teens and young adults improve self love, confidence, and their outlook on life. And this is episode one of my podcast, Empowerment Hour. If you're listening to this on YouTube or Spotify, every Saturday at 12 Eastern Standard Time, you'll be able to join live, get your questions answered on TikTok. But if you have no questions and you just want to listen and watch, we're simply going to be discussing whatever topic I have planned for that day. Now, what comes to my mind for today is compartmentalization. That may sound like a big and fancy word, but it simply is your ability to not allow what happens in your life to affect everything else. Because I'll just be completely honest and transparent. Without going into the details, I am having a pretty chaotic time in my life right now. Like, I'm having a bunch of stuff going on. But I made a commitment to myself that regardless of what happens, every Saturday I am doing this podcast. Even though things may be very difficult for me right now, even though I might be going through some real chaotic times, we can't allow what happens to control us. Because we're not in control of everything in our life, but we are in control of ourselves. So, using what we have, we can simply make the best decisions possible. Now, and that's a pretty broad statement to make. Because a lot of people go through some insanely traumatic things, and I'm well aware of it because I help people with this. But one of the first steps in healing and growing is admitting that you have the power to do it. You have to admit that your life is in your hands, for better or worse. And regardless of what happens, it's up to you to make decisions that will lead you on a path that you want to go down. Now, are you guys able to hear me? I just want to make sure before I start going real deep into today's subject. Okay. Yup, the audio should be working. Great. So, first thing that I want to share is the fact that when stuff happens in your life, you have to look at it and say, how is this serving me? Because our immediate reaction is, woe is me, life is so hard, these things happened to me. But when you take the power back and you say to yourself, how is this happening for me? You might realize that that traumatic experience you went through is actually building you to become stronger so that you're able to ultimately help other people down the line. That's what happened for me. You know, for those who are new and just met me now, my name's Lawrence, and basically what happened was through a series of traumatic events in my childhood, getting bullied, child abuse, all that crazy stuff, I was able to grow from it and take the pain that I went through, and now I use it to help other people. But in the process, I had to get honest with myself. I had to admit that all the anger and frustration that I had towards people in the past, I had to let go of it, as cliche as it sounds. I had to realize that if I keep allowing the past to hold me, I won't be in control of my own life. You know, we give our power and our control away to so many people, places, and things outside of us that we forget we're the one in the driver's seat of our own life. It's kind of like your life is a movie, and you're the main character, the director, the actor, and the script writer all at once. But when you allow the situations you go through to hold you back, you forget you're the one in control of your life. So, I don't know, okay, that was just somebody's username. So, next time you go through something hard, just say to yourself, okay, this thing happened. how can I make it happen for me, not to me? I've helped a lot of people who have gone through, well, I'm trying to figure out how to word this so TikTok don't alert their algorithm or something. But I've helped a lot of people who have went through very, very traumatic experiences. And one of the things I tell them is, how can you learn from this? Like, how can you grow from it? Because life doesn't need to happen to you. You don't need to be a victim of life. You don't need to be the victim. You can be the victor. Everybody wants to be the knight in shining armor. They want to get on the other side and have all the trophies and the awards and the muscles and the cars, and they want all the good stuff. But to get the good stuff, you have to go through the bad stuff. And one of the things that helped me a lot with that is understanding that it just is. Something can happen in your life and you think that it's the worst thing ever, and it might be. It might be terrible. You might have gone through getting fired at a job, homelessness, divorce, substances, all that. Might have been real difficult. But you can take that pain and use it towards something positive. Like, I got bullied a lot growing up, so my decision to become a speaker and coach people and help them really is rooted in my desire for other people to not feel how I felt. So because I don't want other people to feel bad about themselves, I make videos on the internet to try and help people. That's what I decided to do in my life. Instead of allowing my past to define me and hold me back, I said, how can I use all of that anger and that frustration and that pain that I had towards something that is actually beneficial? Because if you don't help yourself, no one can. You have to be willing to admit that happened. That's one of the hardest steps that people have to go through. One of the hardest steps in growing from your past is admitting it happened. And admitting that you want help. It's nothing wrong with being open with people. It's nothing wrong with letting somebody know that you just need help. Like, you can't do it all on your own. You really can't. And that was something I had to accept in my life. I had to accept the fact that as self-reliant as I am, as independent as I am, I can't do everything on my own. I'm just realizing now that people who are joining in and hearing this, they're like, what is this guy talking about? Y'all probably so confused. But I'm just a speaker, and I help people to improve their self-love, confidence, and basically mental health. And what I'm talking about today is just life. What's on my mind. And if people have questions, if you want any kind of advice, just put it in the comments and I will answer your questions right here, right now. Make sure you subscribe to, well, on this case, follow. But back to the point. Your life is up to you. That's the real message I want to get through on this episode, is that your life is in your hands, for better or worse. And the decisions you make are the decisions you have to live with. Yeah, I'm going to write that down actually. The decisions you make are the decisions that you have to live with. So, you have to decide. You have to decide, how do you want to live your life? You have to decide, how do you want to be remembered? You have to decide that your life is in your hands. That's a decision that comes with a lot. It takes a lot to admit that you're the one in control. Not just that, you're in control of the good things, but you're also in control of the quote-unquote bad things. I take accountability for everything in my life. I don't take accountability for what other people did I take accountability for the part I played. I don't take accountability for me getting struck by lightning. I never got struck by lightning. I'm just using that as a metaphor. If I got struck by lightning, I wouldn't say it's my fault I got struck by lightning. I would say that I was the one standing in that spot. I take accountability for the position I put myself in. Now, of course, there's things that happen, like stuff happens to people that they had zero control of. Like, it just happened. Now, you can, however, take control of what you do moving forward. Because moving forward, you can learn from the past. A lot of people who become therapists, they become therapists because they had really traumatic childhoods. And they don't want other people to have traumatic childhoods. So they're trying to help people. A lot of people who become like first responders and emergency services, they went through really traumatic time when they were kids. So they just want to, help other people. And I think that's really what we're on this earth to do. I think a really big part of life is understanding that it's not all about you. It's not just about you. You are a part of a much bigger thing. That may sound very woo-woo esoterical, but it's true. You play a part in so many people's life that you have no idea about. The guy at 7-Eleven who you talk to every day, you might say something to him and it changes his life. You might tell him good morning, have a great day, and that is a little bit of motivation and inspiration to keep him going. Because to you, it just seems like, good morning, just passing comment. But to him, that might have saved his life. You might tell somebody about something that they can do to just start a business or start a YouTube channel. You could tell somebody anything, really, and you never know the impact it can have. So take a moment to look at how you're treating other people. And ask yourself, would you want to be treated that way? Would you want someone to say the things to you that you say to other people? You also do have to be aware that people are often their own biggest hater. People will say things to themselves that they would never say to other people. People will treat themselves in ways that they would never treat somebody else. People will disrespect themselves in ways that they would never disrespect someone else. And I ask myself now, well, why do people do that? I think they do it because they have forgotten who they are. That's a part of it. They forget that they matter. They forget their own worth. And then you have to ask yourself, well, why did that happen? It happened because people often get so wrapped up in looking at the external world to confirm that they matter, rather than looking at their own internal that I matter. It's like you're trying to find yourself outside of yourself. You're trying to find self-worth in external worth. You're trying to find I matter by having other people tell you that you matter. You're trying to find you out here. And people are chasing out here instead of looking in here. If you lost your phone, the first thing you would do is look in the last place you put it. But if you lost you and you're trying to find you the same way you'd find a phone, it doesn't make sense. But what you need to do is just be honest with yourself, be honest with the fact that nobody's perfect. I'm not, you're not. But because you accept that, you're able to take actions towards what do I need to work on? How can I improve as a person? You need to take some time to deliberately sit down and, think about it. Because the thing that we avoid really are only going to keep chasing us down. Hello to everybody who's joining in. Right now, I'm kind of just letting my mind run. I'm just sharing my thoughts and opinions that I think can help somebody. And if any of you happen to want a piece of life advice, you can just put that in the comments and I'll answer it. But back to the point, let me get some more water. If you want to change your life, it starts with you. That's something I believe a lot of people need to hear. If you want to change your life, it starts with you. And you got to look in the mirror. Like that song by Michael Jackson, Man in the Mirror. Imagine you're looking into a mirror and your hair is a mess. And you're trying to comb the mirror instead of combing your own hair. That's what a lot of people do. They're trying to fix something outside of them when the stuff outside of you is a result of what's going on inside of you. Inside of you, there is procrastination, but you're trying to fix the procrastination outside of you. Now, the point there is that until you pay attention to what goes on inside of you, you can't fix the outside. Because the outside is a result of the inside. If the inside is dirty, the outside will be dirty. If the inside is not caring about yourself, then the outside will reflect that. Anybody got any questions? Because the reason I'm doing this live is I want feedback. Like, I want people to let me know what you think, any questions you have, and just anything y'all want to talk about, because I could sit here and talk to myself for an hour straight, but I prefer to, have some engagement. And looking back on my own life, something that I believe a lot of, people can take from this too, is that you're the only person who knows you as much as you know yourself. You can't keep trying to have the outside world tell you your worth. You have to understand it for yourself. How do you do that? Journaling, that's a big one. You have to, write down your thoughts. You have to take some time to understand yourself. You have to take some time to just be present. We spend so much time trying to chase the next thing, do the next thing, chase after these trends, be something, that we forget what we are. We forget who we are because we're spending so much time trying to be something else. But the only thing you need to be is you. And nobody can tell you how to be you. Nobody can tell you how to live your life because it's your life. By definition, you're the only person who has lived your exact life with all the different things that happened, with all the different ways they happened, in the exact way that they happened. Which might sound very confusing because it kind of is. But it's like each of us are our own unique thing. We're each our own little snowflake. That's the best way I could think of it. Because there's no two snowflakes that are the exact same. There's no two people that are the exact same. There's no two anything that is the exact same. Even trees. Two trees can be the same type of tree, but they don't look the exact same. Their branches grow differently. They might have different curves in them. They might be shaped differently. And we will spend so much time being taught that you need to be an exact way, that you need to think a certain way, talk a certain way, dress a certain way. But the reality is that it's your life. And if you keep trying to be someone else, you're not being you. But the hardest thing to be in this world is yourself. Because we live in a world that is constantly trying to make us be someone else. You just take a look around and you can see how social media, the internet, news, magazines, all of it, is constantly saying dress this way, be this way, talk this way, live this way. But what about just being you? What about taking a look in the mirror and saying, I like what I see? Whether you curvy, whether you skinny, whether you heavy, whether you tall, short, black, white, green, or blue, I don't care. It's all about realizing that whatever you are and however you are, you matter. And that's the first step in growing from your past. You have to love yourself enough to do the work. You have to love yourself enough to know that I deserve help. Not that you're entitled to it. Not that, you need to just sit around and wait for someone to save you from yourself. But instead, it's that when people come to you and they say, hey, I'm here for you, I care, I want to help you, that it's okay to get it. That might be a pastor, that might be a school teacher, it might be a family, it might be friends, it might be a therapist, it might be, whoever. But you deserve help because you matter. I spent so much of my life thinking that I could just do it on my own. Nope. I spent so much of my life thinking that I had the solution to all my problems. I spent so much of my life thinking that I was just going to figure every single thing out on my own. Nope. The solution is within you, but it also takes you being willing to admit that you're not able to just control everything. You can't control every single thing that happens, but you can control what you do. You can't control other people, but you can control what you do. You can't control what happens, but you can control how you respond to it. Not react. You don't want to react. You want to respond. A reaction is when something happens and you just snap. You just get mad, you get angry, you throw stuff, you scream. That's a reaction. A response is something happens, you think about it, you observe, and then you move forward with a clear plan. It's like a reaction is you put your hand on a stove and it burns and you just scream. That's a reaction. A response, let me plug my laptop in so this thing doesn't die on me. A response is you put your hand on the stove, you realize that it's hot, you realize that it burns, and then you take your hand off the stove and don't do that again. You learn from your past, you learn from your mistakes. And that kind of brings us full circle in how your past may have happened. It may have, it might be real painful, but instead of allowing what happened to you to define your life, you can take a look at it and say, how can this happen for me? What can I learn from this? How can I move forward? How can I grow? Because life happens. It happens. Everybody goes through something. Everybody gets broken up with at some point. Everybody gets cheated on. Everybody loses money. Everybody gets fired from a job. Life happens. But just because life happens doesn't mean that you have to stay a victim of life. Because I know plenty of people, myself included, who have gone through things that people did things to them. People did stuff to them, myself included. And what we all had to accept was that, okay, I can either sit here and allow this to define the rest of my life, or I can learn from it. I can decide to either be the victim or the victor. And in order to be the victor, you have to look at it head on. You can't keep running from your problems. Running from your problems is not going to work, because Wherever you are is where you are. And your problems are within you. Your problem isn't the bottle. Your problem isn't the external thing. It's not the addiction itself. The problem is something inside of you. You're trying to numb some sort of pain. You're trying to avoid something. And it's only when you stop avoiding and you look at things head on that you're able to learn and grow and become who you were meant to be. Because God did not put you on this earth to just sit around and suffer all day. God is not up there looking at you and going, aha, his life is so hard, her life is so hard. No. I believe that in order for you to become strong, smart, and develop and grow into the person that you're meant to be, you have to go through stuff. If you had a sword, right, to make a sword, you had to dig up this dirt, you had to dig up these rocks, and you put them in the fire, and then you melt it down, and then you hammer it, and you do all this crazy stuff, right? So in order for you to become strong, smart, develop, confident, whatever, you gotta go through stuff. And the people that we look up to, those are the people who went through stuff and came out the other side stronger. LeBron James, think about how much this guy trained. Michael Jordan, think about how much he trains. Arnold Schwarzenegger, think about how many times he went to the gym at 2 a.m. and it was cold and there was nobody there and it was dark and he got injured. Think about how many times that happened. Jesus fasted for 40 days and 40 nights in the desert. So, if you want to be somebody who is incredible, there's going to be times you're going to have to go through some stuff. I don't come on YouTube and TikTok and all this and just make stuff up. I don't just come on here and talk about stuff I haven't lived. When y'all hear me talking about mental health recovery, that's because I went through some stuff. Okay? That's why I wrote a book on it. I wrote a book on how to improve your mental health because I myself had to do it. I wrote a book on how to develop good habits and how to break bad habits because I myself had to do it. I go to these schools and speak about your life and how to set goals and just how to realize your own self-worth because I had to do it. There's a lot of people who talk about things that they're not credible on. That's one of the big things why you don't see me collaborate with a lot of people. If you ever see me on a podcast or getting interviewed somewhere, it's because I looked into that person, I did my research, and I said, that person is talking about something that they're qualified for. I think the best word for this is, it's very disrespectful when someone tries to portray themselves as something that they're not. It's very disrespectful, especially when these are people who are trying to give you advice and inspire you and motivate you. Everything I talk about, I lived it. Everything I talked about. Everything I post about, I lived it. Everything I write on my blog about, I lived it. When I'm giving speeches, I'm talking about my life. I'm not talking about, this person did this and that person did this. Nope. I'm talking about what I've been through. I'm talking about what I've seen. I'm talking about, I got the results. I have the facts to back it up. And that's a big reason why when I try to help people and I'm making these videos and I'm doing everything I do, it's because I know what I'm talking about. I know that this matters. I know that there's a lot of people in the world who feel like they don't matter because I used to be one of them. Thank you for that. I know that there's a lot of people in the world who feel like, just woe is me, I can't be anything, nobody cares, because I felt like that. And now I'm on the other side of it. So I try to help other people by taking what I know, making videos, making posts, making YouTube videos, and doing all that to just try and, put some light into the world. Because it gets real dark sometimes. It's like every other day we hear about some tragedy, celebrity dramas, this person, something happened to them, this happened, news, just whatever. Life is life get hard sometimes. Bad stuff happens in the world. And we hear so much about the bad, but so little about the good. We hear so much about, celebrity drama, but we hear so little about your life matters. You could be someone in this world. And I ask myself, why is that? Like, why is it that we hear so much about the bad, but we hear so little about the good? It's because when people are in a state of fear, they're easy to control. I know it might sound like a conspiracy theorist. And it might sound like, very conspiracy type information. But just think about it. If I can keep someone in a state where they're afraid and they're nervous and they just only see problems, they're going to buy a lot of stuff because they're trying to fill a void inside of them because they haven't taken the time to, self-reflect and go, you know what? I matter. I don't need that. I mean, it might be cool. It might be cool to get the new shoes or the car or the big house, but I don't really need it. I have my one bedroom apartment. I have my Nikes. I have my Toyota Civic, and I'm good. Like, yeah, it might be cool to have a fancy car, but I don't really need it. It might be cool to buy a bunch of shoes and clothes, but I don't really need it. And the people who are trying to profit off of you, they'll say things like, oh, don't trust anybody and everyone's going to cheat on you. But they won't if you buy my $900 course. Do not buy those $900 courses, please. Please. These are people who are just they're trying to profit off your pain. I'm here trying to help you, help yourself, so that you can live a life that is better for you. And I'm not claiming that I have all the answers. I'm not claiming that I know everything. I'm just claiming that I know enough. I know what I know. I don't know what I don't know. But that also means that it's up to you to figure certain things out. Like, I can't figure everything out. I know I can't. But what I can do is just play my part. I can simply come on here, do the best I can with what I've got, and, help somebody. And I know that throughout this, I've been kind of rambling. I know a lot of stuff I've said probably all over the place. But I know there's something in there that somebody's going to hear and be like, wow, that was good. He might have been all over the place for 30 minutes, but something in there was good. And again, if anyone has questions, just put those in the comments and I'll answer them. Just if you have like a piece of advice you want, you can put that in the comments. It's resonating. Thank you. Because, it's kind of weird to be talking into this camera and you got people watching, but I don't hear anything. I don't know if people are just, what's going on? And I get in my own head sometimes. That's the next point I'm going to bring up. I get in my own head a lot. That's something I know a lot of people do. A lot of people get in their own head too much. You might be on a stage singing. You might be making music. Whatever. And you start thinking, what are other people going to think? And it makes you think that it's not good enough. We judge ourselves so harsh. We're often our own biggest critics. But we need to learn how to be our own fans too. We need to learn how to embrace our weirdness, our unique thing. We need to learn to look at ourselves and just appreciate who we are. Appreciate the way that we are. Appreciate the way that we talk, dress, think, etc. And that was something that took me a long time to do. Because I'm sure plenty of people have realized this, but I have a speech impediment. So when I talk and I hear my own voice sometimes, I'm just like, is that really what I sound like? And I used to be really insecure in my own voice. But I had to learn to just accept, hey, this is how I sound. This is just me. And when you learn to accept those things about yourself, you start to realize that a lot of times your biggest insecurity is actually tied to what you need to do. You might think that your voice sounds weird, but there's people who love it. You might think that the way you dress is weird, but there's people who love that. Like, I can't remember who said it, but there's this quote that by being yourself, you unknowingly give other people the permission to be themselves. By being you, you give people permission to be them because it lets them know that it's safe to just be. Because the world's going to try to shoot you down. It's going to try to tell you that, oh, the way you dress and the way you talk and the way you look and how your hair. And I've had people say all kinds of things about me. But just because somebody says something about you doesn't mean you got to listen. You know, there are a lot of people who spend time talking about other people. Like, there's people who spend so much time talking about other people that they forget to live their own life. I know that sounds kind of wild, but there's so many people who sit around and the only thing they do is hate on other people, troll on other people, talk about other people, say what somebody else can and cannot be, that they basically just aren't living their life. You know, if you really think about it, most of the people who are going to try to tear you down, they're tearing themselves down. And once you understand that, it's kind of like you start to have sympathy towards them. I think that's the only way I know how to describe it. When people send me like hate comments and mean DMs, I just remind myself that like, oh yeah, compassion for them. Definitely. Because it's kind of like when Jesus was getting crucified and he said, forgive them for they don't know. Most people don't know that when they're trying to hate on somebody else, it's actually just them projecting their own insecurities out onto other people. You know, there's a lot of people who will say things like, I hate when other people complain, but they themselves complain. There's a lot of people who will say, my biggest pet peeve is people who have bad breath, but they don't even brush their own teeth. I hope you guys got the metaphor. So, you got to be honest with yourselves. Being honest when it ain't convenient. You got to be honest about the good and the bad. You got to be honest that, hey, I did what I did. I said what I said. Everything I did, I did. I'm not going to blame myself for what somebody else might have did, but I'm going to blame myself for what I did. My decisions have led me to where I am. I did what I did. I said what I said, and everything that happened, I played a part in it. I'm not going to point the finger at anybody else except me. You got to look in the mirror before you start looking outside of yourself. You know, like I said earlier, it's like people are looking into a mirror, trying to comb the mirror rather than combing their own hair. People will point the finger at everyone and everything else, but they don't take the time to just say like, hey, what am I doing that is contributing? You know, something that's been happening in my life pretty frequently is that I'll be out and about. I see somebody, and I'm like, oh, you know, she's kind of cute. Let me go try to get to know her. You know, I'm trying to put myself out here, y'all. And we might have a conversation, exchange Instagrams. I send a message, nothing. I hear nothing. And I was trying to figure out, like, well, am I doing something? Like, did I say something? What am I doing? Because this is happening too often for it to just be a coincidence. So I was thinking to myself, well, what am I doing that is leading to the result that I'm getting? And I had to say, well, Lawrence, maybe it's the way you're dressed. Maybe it's how you talk. Maybe you were like too close or whatever. And we can spend so much time trying to figure out other people. We can spend so much time trying to figure out why did they do what they did. But sometimes you gotta say, well, they did what they did. I will make my decision. If I don't want that person in my life, they gotta go. If I realize that these people, places, and things aren't good for me, I gotta quit it. Now, the part where it gets hard though is when that means you gotta start cutting off people. Because it's gonna be plenty times when you're gonna have a friend or a relationship or a family member who is no good for you. But you're like, oh, but this my cousin, this my aunt, this my brother, this my sister. But if they're not good for you, they're not good for you. And that's painful to do. It can be really, really, really painful to admit that your best friend is a hater. Like, it is what it is. I don't want to have to be the bearer of bad news, but if your best friend is hating on you, that is not your friend. That's your enemy. You're either with me or you're against me. That's how it is. And you have to be with yourself. You know, when you lay your head down at night, you're the one who had to live with every decision that you've made. You're the one who had to live your life because it's your life. Like, you can't escape it. And people try to escape their problems, and they think that I'm just going to outrun myself. They think I'm going to outrun myself. But no, you're not. What I mean by this is, right? Let's say you went through something traumatic. You went through like a really traumatic thing, okay? And that was not your fault. But you start trying to numb yourself with like an addiction. You start trying to drink the pain away and whatnot. And I understand why you do that. You're just trying to numb the pain. But the problem is that if you keep trying to run from yourself, you're going to always be running. And you can't, because wherever you are, there you are. Wherever you are, there you are. If you have a problem of picking bad partners, the next partner you pick is going to be a bad partner. Because it's something in you that is attracting you to these people. And that's not your fault, but it is the result of your decisions. If the last 5 people you dated cheated on you, it's a result of the fact that you pick people who cheat on you. That's the facts. Now, you got to figure out, well, like, why am I picking these people? Like, why am I picking people who are bad for me in relationships? Maybe growing up, you saw mom and dad cheating each other. Maybe growing up, you saw mom and dad putting hands on each other. Maybe growing up, grandma and grandpa and aunts and uncles were just arguing all the time. And as a kid, you start to believe that that's what love is. As a kid, you just soak up everything around you. So in your environment as a child, you saw all this chaos and you start to think that that's what love is supposed to be. And as a grown adult, you keep picking people who are bad for you like a sponge. Exactly. As an adult, you running off the same program as you did when you was 5 years old. That's the truth. And until you get honest about it, you can't grow from it. And it's hard to. It's hard to get honest about the reason why I keep picking people who cheat on me. It become mom and dad were cheating on each other. That's hard to admit, but it's the truth. It's hard to admit that the reason why you can't put down that bottle is because growing up, you saw dad drinking that bottle. That's the truth. It's hard to admit that the reason why you can't put down the blunt is because growing up, you know, you went through XYZ, you had the traumatic event, and you're just trying to numb your pain. It's the truth, though. It's hard to admit, but the truth will set you free. Now, in the process, though, the truth is going to hurt. It's going to hurt when you have to get honest about these sort of things. It's going to hurt real bad when you got to peel back the Band-Aid and look at it. And look at the facts. Because acceptance is the first step usually. Exactly. And it's not to accept just that, oh, I'm stuck here. It's not saying like you got to accept that, oh, woe is me, this is my life. No, you just got to accept that, hey, this is what's happening. You got to accept the facts are the facts. However you feel about it, the facts remain the facts. So, the first step, you got to just look around and be like, dang, why do everybody I date cheat on me? Why do I have this addiction? Why do I keep picking people who put their hands on me? Why? What am I doing? Because at the end of the day, I'm the one picking these people. At the end of the day, I'm the one who can't put the bottle down. At the end of the day, I'm the one doing it. So what am I doing? Okay, I'm doing this. I'm picking people who are bad for me. Why? What did I see growing up? What did the music tell me? What do I see on TV? What kind of people am I around? What kind of social groups am I around? What am I taking in that's leading me to do this? Okay, I'm doing this because I'm hanging around people who are disrespectful. I'm hanging around people who treat me bad. Why? Why do I hang around people who treat me bad? Because I treat myself bad. It's the truth, though. The truth is, a lot of people who are around people who disrespect them are around those people because they disrespect themselves. And if you don't love you, how do you expect somebody else to love you? They can't. If you don't love you, nobody can. Because how am I supposed to love someone who doesn't even believe that they're worthy of love? And then you gotta ask yourself, well, why do you feel like you're not worthy of love? Well, how was your family treating you when you was a kid? Maybe the reason why you had that insecurity, maybe the reason why you feel that way is because mom and dad and aunt and uncle and brother and sister were doing stuff to you when you was a kid. That could be the truth. Maybe it's because growing up you got bullied a lot and you never dealt with that pain. That's the truth. Maybe the reason is because growing up you saw stuff you wasn't supposed to, you grew up in a real bad environment, and you're just trying to block out the memories. I understand why. But until you get honest and say that the truth is the truth, and until you just accept that, hey, it's real, you can't heal from it. And people would much rather run from their problems than admit it. And I understand why, because it's painful to admit. It is very painful. But until you clean out that closet, until you look under the bed, the monster's always going to be there. The monster under your bed will always be there until you get under there and say, I'm here. And he's looking back at you and you see all that darkness. You see all that fear, all that pain, all that trauma, all of that most gut-wrenching dark stuff you went through when you was a kid. You got to look at that. You got to look at it. And a lot of people don't because it's scary. It is real scary to look at the most dark, terrifying, painful stuff you have went through and just say, that happened. That was real. You might need to get some therapy for that. You might need to talk to your pastor, your rabbi, whoever. You might need to pray about it. However you deal with it is how you deal with it. But until you deal with your pain and the things you went through, it's always going to be there. You know, it's like you're trying to climb a mountain with a bunch of bricks inside of a book bag. How do you expect to get to the top of the mountain carrying dead weight? And unfortunately, a lot of times, that dead weight is other people who have no business being in your life. Sometimes that dead weight is the trauma you went through when you was a kid. That dead weight could be bad habits. That dead weight could be bad eating habits. It could be so many things. But at the end of the day, it's up to you. At the end of the day, if you don't make change in your life, you're gonna have to live it. And I know that's hard. I know it's so painful to have to just sit down with yourself. A lot of people cannot be around themselves. A lot of people are terrified to spend time alone in silence. Because when you sit in silence and you sit with your thoughts, oh, all them thoughts that you've been running from gonna get real loud. The monster under that bed gonna grab your ankle and he gonna say, remember me? Remember what happened when you was a kid? Remember what people did to you? Remember what people said about you? And that's the point where a lot of people start crashing out because, you know, that anger, that frustration, that trauma, those emotions, it gotta go somewhere. It has to. But if you don't control it, it's like a horse. You have this wild animal inside of you that until you learn to control the thing, it's just going to start kicking and shouting and doing all this stuff. So you got to figure out how to handle that. And how do you handle that? It's different for everybody. The way you handle it is different for everybody. But the best ways I can think of, if you're angry, go do some push-ups. Go hit the gym. Do some squats. You got all these thoughts in your head running around. Get a notebook. Write them down. Write down what is going on in here. Because all them thoughts up in here, you get that out on the paper, it helps you calm down. You might need to pray about it. You might need to do some yoga. But at the end of the day, if you don't deal with your problems, they're always going to be there. You know, the skeleton can only be in your closet for so long until it starts rotting. And once it starts rotting, it's going to start staking up the house. Yeah, my office has automatic lights, so just flashed off there. But it's like you're trying to hide the skeleton in the closet. And eventually, it'll just start rotting. And it'll start stinking up the house. So, until you deal with your problems, they're always going to be there. You know, you can only keep sweeping crumbs under the rug until the crumbs start attracting roaches. And when it starts attracting roaches and your whole house starts becoming infested, it's because you didn't deal with it. You know, a lot of the stuff that we go through, you know, the traumas, the abuse, the neglect, all that stuff, if you don't deal with that, it's going to haunt you for the rest of your life. It really will. And I've seen it happen to people so many times. I have seen so many people destroy their entire life because they didn't deal with their problems. And it starts simple. You know, you might just start with like one thing and then it turn to two things and then three things and four things. And before you know it, you're under the bridge because you didn't deal with your problems. Okay? If you don't live your life, can't nobody. And you have to live with all the good and all the bad. The consequences of your actions are for you to live with. Nobody else will live with the consequences of your actions except you and anybody who is directly involved. No, unless you do something like major. But most of the time, your problems are pretty darn easy to solve. It's just that we get so wrapped up and so in our own head about it that we make it worse inside of our head than it actually has to be in reality. Because in reality, it just is what it is. Stuff happened. But it's up to you to decide what you're going to make happen. It's up to you to say, hey, the past is the past, and I'm going to use what I can to move forward. Man, it was fun. Yeah, this was fun. This was the first episode of it. You know, Empowerment Hour. We're going to be doing this every Saturday on TikTok Live at 12 noon Eastern Standard Time. Sometimes I'm going to have stuff prepared. Other times I'm just going to let loose like I did today. You know, it's kind of funny to think that when I was a kid, I was so insecure about talking. I'm very talkative, as y'all can tell, but when I was younger, I was very worried about what people would think of me. I was very worried about being different. But hey, We're all different in our own ways. We all have our own unique quirks. For mine, it's that I talk a lot faster than my brain. My brain makes like a million words a second, and my mouth just jumbles them all up together. It's a beautiful thing, but if you don't learn how to embrace what makes you different, you're just gonna be being somebody else. It's like ice cream. Some people are vanilla, some are chocolate, some are rocky road, but you have to take the path that you're meant to go down. And that was such a great metaphor right there. And nobody can be you except you. That's a really quote unquote cliche message. But really, at the end of the day, this is your life. You have to live it. You don't want to be a side character in your own movie. Imagine the movie is, okay, we detected inactivity during your current live, complete the verification to continue your current live. Okay, great. Let me handle that so I'm able to, keep going. Great. But it's like you're being a side character in your own movie. You're the main character of your movie. The problem, though, is that people will tell you things like, oh, you got main character syndrome, you're arrogant, you're full of yourself, you're cocky. Of course I'm full of myself. Because if you're not full of yourself, you're empty of yourself. If you are not full of yourself, you're empty of yourself. And when you are empty of yourself, you will be someone else. If you don't know who you are, somebody else can tell you who to be. And there are a lot of people who will profit off of that. There are a lot of people, men, women, everyone, who will try to profit off of you not knowing who you are. Buy our thing. Dress our way. Talk our way. Join our community. Don't be like them, be like us. This is why people need to know who they are. Because if you don't know who you are, somebody else will tell you who to be. And most of the time, the people telling you who to be do not have your best interest at heart. They don't. And this can be, challenging because sometimes the people who are telling you who to be are your family. They're your friends. It might be your girlfriend or boyfriend, husband or wife. And you have to be open to feedback. You have to be willing to listen, but also understand that at the end of the day, everything you do, you got to live with it. They don't. Everything you do, you got to live with that. Other people don't. So someone can give you advice such as, hey, I think you should become a doctor. I think you should become an engineer. And they mean well. They're saying like, hey, I think you should get this job. It's high paying. It's stable. It's a good career. The problem, though, is if you don't want to be an engineer, don't be an engineer. And people will go to college and get this degree. They'll have this career for 30 years that they hate. All because that's what their mom wanted them to do. My mom wanted me to go to college. And I understand why. You could get a degree, different jobs. It sounds like a great idea. And this is a great thing for her to say. But I explained to her that, hey, I understand that that's the path that you think I should go down, but I'm going to go down this other path. And at first she didn't understand, but now she did. And now I have results. I have my own office. I run a business speaking. I am, really achieving my goals out here. I'm living my life. And, close out, I'm living my life. I'm not living the life that somebody else wants me to live. I'm not living the life that somebody else said I should live. I'm not living the life that other people think I should live. I'm living the life that I'm living. And because I am living my life, I give other people the freedom to live theirs. If you're not doing anything criminal, if you're not doing anything immoral, and you're not hurting yourself or hurting others, live your life. Make sure you follow, subscribe. This was episode 1 of Empowerment Hour, We're going to be doing this every Saturday, 12 Eastern Standard Time, on TikTok Live. It's also going to be posted on Spotify and YouTube at my channel. My channel name is Lawrence C. Empowers. I hope that you all have a wonderful, lovely day. And remember, be yourself. Don't be anybody else. You matter, and it's your life. Have a good one. Okay, how do I get this to like close out? Okay. Yeah, let me figure out how to, get this to end.